What's going on YouTube? It's Teach, back again with another video, and today I'm coming at you with my updated 2023 NFL Draft Big Board. I already have the first version of this out, and that was from months and months and months ago. Today I'm giving you my top 100 prospects as we are here 2 days away from the NFL Draft. We're going to be live for day 1 as well as day 2, so if you're new to the channel, want to join us for that, or just looking for more football coverage in your life, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Be sure to hit that like button. It would seriously help me and the channel out a ton. It gets this video out to more people, so hopefully we can grow the community. And let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Quick caveat on that though, a big board is as subjective as it gets. This is solely how I feel about these prospects and what I see when I look at it. So naturally, you're going to have a different view of it. So let me hear your thoughts. Who's higher on your board versus mine? Who's lower on your board versus mine? And then maybe tell me your favorite prospect and maybe a team landing spot that you like a ton, or a prospect on this list that you would love to see your favorite team draft. But let's go ahead and jump into it. We start at the top, and because I'm going over 100 prospects, I'm going to be pretty quick and succinct, and apologies if I talk fast. I do have a bad knack for that, but I'm going to try to keep the pace up pretty quick. Bryce Young, if you've been around the channel, you know he's QB1 pretty much the whole cycle for me. I had CJ Stroud as my way too early QB1, and that was a little bit of a projection. He struggled early, kind of flipped my mind to Bryce Young, and even when CJ Stroud kind of got back on track, I still think Young played better. Love his intangibles, love his feel for the game. The pocket presence is second to none to anybody in this class. And then fantastic above the shoulders, plus level arm, plus level accuracy. Yeah, I think he should be the #1 guy taken on Thursday night. And also, I do want to note, I do take position value into the equation here. So the reason Bryce Young is #1 ahead of Carter, Anderson, and Robinson, which you see those little blue chips next to him, those are literally blue poker chips. So point pretty clear. I think there's only 3 blue chippers this year. And since the 2021 draft, we've been kind of spoiled because that class, you could easily make an argument, and even looking in retrospect, 6, 7 blue chippers, and then you look at how Rashawn Slater falls to 13. Really, there's even more than what I would have maybe put in my big board that year. But position value is something I take into account here. So Bryce Young, being a quarterback, does get pushed up the board ahead of Carter, Anderson, Robinson, who I all think are blue chippers. I've been saying this whole cycle, I think Carter's the best non-quarterback, great run stopper, wins with power and finesse. I also think he shows up in big games, like that Tennessee game. He had some huge stops and was a reason why Tennessee didn't really get that offense off the ground, especially early on. So, you know, focusing on the player here, I don't get to interview him, so that's not something I can fully put into the equation. The immaturity concerns are certainly there, but football player-wise, I think he's the second best player in this class by a hair over Will Anderson, who played at the 4-tech last year for Alabama, still a high-level run defender, already gained some weight and some strength, but I think he plays bigger than the 245 that he played at Alabama. So plus-level run defender right away, great get-off, explosiveness, he's got the bend, he can also win with power. That's why I was so impressive when Darnell Wright was able to kind of sit and anchor and hold his own against Will Anderson. But yeah, he's a freak athlete, and if he wasn't the sole focus of attention for every offense last year, I wish we could see what the numbers would look like if he just had true one-on-one sets throughout last season. And then Bijan Robinson, decided to make him 4. I almost had the other quarterbacks just ahead of him because, again, position value is a part of this. But Bijan's a freak, man. The pass-catching upside, I think he runs faster than 4.47. I don't think he had the cleanest, 40-yard dash technique. He was kind of bobbing in the lane early on, so I think he's even faster than that. Can win with speed, power, elusiveness, the jump cuts there, the spins there. He can set up bad angles for DB. Name something Bijan Robinson can do, and he can do it. And to me, it's him and Saquon Barkley is the best running back prospect since Adrian Peterson. I give the edge to Bijan just because I think he's slightly better as a receiver, and I think he fits a little bit more what new age running backs need to do. But Saquon also did everything he did at 230 versus Robinson, who's a little bit lighter. So yeah, big Bijan fan, and if you're a big draft fan, you've heard everything there needs to be said about Bijan Robinson. The dude's a stud. And then we get our 3 quarterbacks here. I still have Levis as QB2, and it's kind of 2A, 2B with him and Stroud. It's ceiling versus floor argument with these 2 guys. I think Levis has the higher ceiling, but admittedly has a much lower floor than CJ Stroud. Stroud, to me, solid floor. I feel comfortable with him on his rookie contract. But the idea of paying him $40+ million a year is where I start to get some hesitation, because I think he's a guy that needs a good offensive system and a good supporting cast around him. And once you start paying a quarterback $40+ million a year, everything around him, defense, you're going to have to cut corners when it comes to spending at wide receiver or line, all that sort of stuff. I think that could work against him in a lot of ways. But I understand a lot of people like Stroud, and there's a reason I have 4 quarterbacks in the top 7, and in just about every mock draft I do, I have 4 going in the top 10, and that's been something I've been saying since January. I think it's not that I don't like Stroud, I just like Levis more. I think there's 4 quarterbacks who are more than worthy of going in the top 10. So I just like this year's quarterback class a ton. So then we have Anthony Richardson at number 7 overall player, QB4. He's just raw when it comes to both playing experience and kind of making those decisions at the line of scrimmage. But also the consistency in his throwing motion isn't always there. Now, granted, what it is, the dude's got perfect, like technique. It's not like teaching this guy to play quarterback, because there are throws where it is flawless and he's dropping dimes. But then there's other times where it's like, well, that wasn't, and it literally could be the next throw for all you know. Like, it could be the next throw after he drops a dime, and it's like, well, what was that? So you need to iron out that consistency, which I think is more than plausible to ask the guy to do. And then you're getting one of the biggest freaks of all time from an athletic standpoint at the position. So yeah, definitely an upside play. I also think it comes with a relatively high floor, because worst comes to worst, you lean into his rushing ability, and he may be a guy who completes 50% of his passes, but because he's such a good runner, you can still have a relatively solid offense. And then we get Christian Gonzalez at 8. Him and Brian Branch, it was kind of back and forth between these two guys, because I like them both a ton. I think Gonzalez probably a little bit better of an upside play versus Branch, the higher floor. So you'll hear me say that a lot throughout this video, ceiling versus floor argument. I think Gonzalez, I'll lean into the ceiling versus the floor. And I love his scheme versatility, the size, the 4.3, 40 plus inch vertical. Like, he's just got every tool in the toolbox you need to become a top 5 corner, top 10 corner in the NFL. Needs some refinement in his game, but I think he already made some strides last year at Oregon. Started to see the ball production. He was tracking the ball a whole lot better. And I also think he's got that gamer mindset. And I'll say that same thing about Devon Witherspoon, where he does not want to get beat on consecutive reps. At corner, you're going to lose reps. But if you can limit how many times it happens and how many times in a row it happens, you're going to be set up for success. And I think Gonzalez kind of has that mentality where it's like, all right, you got me that one time. Enjoy it while it lasts. So, big fan of his. And then if you've been around the channel, you know Brian Branch is one of my guys. I love this dude. I think he can play all 5 positions in the secondary. 4.58 speed maybe isn't like, I want this guy playing man press corner on the outside or anything. And maybe free safety also gives you some hesitation. But I think he plays faster than that. I wish I had the NGS data, because I think the game tracking speed would show that he's faster than 4.58. But he's so instinctual, high football IQ guy, great tackler, good in man and zone. I think you can blitz with them. I really don't think there's a part of Brian Branch's game that is a weakness, other than the fact that you look at his athletic profile and nothing jumps off the page. But again, I just trust the player. I trust the tape. I think he's even better than those numbers suggest. And then Paris Johnson Jr., he's been my OT1 pretty much this whole cycle. He is this awesome blend of having prototypical size, plus level athleticism, fantastic mirroring ability, and he's played right guard 2 years ago and then flipped over to left tackle and handled that transition seamlessly. So I think whether it's the Bears at 9 ask him to play right tackle, or whoever may take him in the teens, this guy can plug in and play pretty much anywhere other than center day one. Now I hope it's at left tackle, because to me that's still the most valuable position on the O-line. That or right tackle is just, I think naturally there's more value there. And I think he can handle that flip to right tackle again more than fine. So yeah, big fan of Paris Johnson Jr. And the game that he brings to the table. Then we get to 11 through 20. Devon Witherspoon, again, he's got that mentality where this guy's a dog, and that's hard to quantify for sure, but this guy's not losing 2 snaps in a row. And you also see that kind of dog mentality come into the fact he's a good tackler, a hard hitter, all that sort of stuff that has been talked about a ton this cycle. But dude, he's such a sudden athlete, and his mirroring ability, just from a corner perspective, we were just talking about Paris Johnson Jr., same but different here for Witherspoon, where it's like, he can read and react to wide receiver, and he's also, again, so football sound where he can anticipate the route before it's even being run, gets to his top speed and breakneck pace, and then goes out and runs 4.42 at his pro day. Pro day numbers tend to be a little inflated, but that's still a sub 4.540, and I think that's more than enough given he does have that acceleration and that agility to play with as well. So I think he can fit into multiple defenses as well. So yeah, love me some Devon Witherspoon. And then Joey Porter Jr. comes in here at 12, just a little different. And also there's going to be a few guys that have white on their names, just because Penn State blue is way too dark given the background, and Texas A&M is the other school where you'll notice that. So just wanted to get that disclaimer out of the way. So Joey Porter Jr., kind of the other side of the same coin, where 6'2.5", 100th percentile arm length. It's like, oh my God, this guy has some crazy intangibles and crazy tools to work with, and he's getting better year over year at Penn State. Oh, and his dad's a former NFL player and a pretty damn good one at that. What's not to love about Joey Porter Jr.? I just wish I knew that 3-cone. And if we had the 3-cone, and if it was anything above 50th percentile, he probably trades places with Witherspoon just because of the upside, floor versus ceiling argument all over again. But since I don't have that number, I'll stick with what I know I have in Witherspoon versus what I'm a little concerned about with Porter Jr. But I think this guy is more than capable of fitting in any defense. Everybody knows that he's got man press ability, and because of that, cover 2-4-6 off of it. And I think he'll be fine in cover 3. Again, I worry about the change of direction skills, be able to plant his foot, go make a play on the ball or a receiver. But I think he can backpedal, play a lane, play a third, and be more than fine. And with those long arms, he's going to break up a ton of passes. So still a big Joey Porter Jr. fan. Peter Skoronski, I have him as O-line because at this point, I think he's probably best suited to play guard with the ability to move to tackle in a pinch, kind of like Elijah Vera Tucker with what we saw last year with the Jets. And that being said, whether it's the Jets at 13, the Packers at 15, I think he brings a ton of value to those squads. And even, like Atlanta at 8, like if they can engineer a trade down and maybe get to 11 if they swap places with Tennessee, don't rule that out because he could also be a Jake Matthews replacement after a couple of years of playing left guard. So, and I know the Falcons are still looking for that left guard upgrade after having Wilkinson hit free agency. Right now, it's slotted in as Davis Hallman on our lads, and I think you can do better than Hallman there at that spot. But Skoronski, so technically sound as a pass protector. He makes up for the 32.25-inch arms, and also probably the best blocking lineman, point blank and simple on the move. So yeah, there's still a ton to love about Peter Skoronski. Tyree Wilson comes in at 14 just because there's still things that need to be cleaned up. Now I get the potential is there, but also when you have problems that still exist after playing 5 years of college football, that gives me a little bit of pause. But like the hand placement and just like the moveset in general, not great. But 86-inch wingspan, 6'6", yeah, that is going to win, and that's going to play at the next level. I also think he's a guy that needs to be on a defense that's going to move him around. I don't think you can just kind of play T.J. Watt, play him at one side of the defensive line, or go set him up against one offensive lineman and just let that be the matchup every single snap. I think he needs to be kind of boosted up by a defense that's going to let his versatility play into a factor here. And also, I think, man, a 4-3 defense that's willing to move him inside and let that 86-inch wingspan, work against guards, that's the mismatch to take advantage of. So, it kind of gives me shades of Jadeveon Clowney, where like Clowney was best when he was being moved all over the place in Houston. Now, different body types, different athletes, all that stuff. I'm not saying Jadeveon Clowney, Tyree Wilson are 1-to-1, but I think that's when you see Clowney getting the most production when he's moved around. I think the same could be true here for Tyree Wilson, especially in a 4-3 defense where you have that flexibility. A couple of wide receivers here, and this is where I want to have this wide receiver debate that I've been kind of talking about and teeing up in previous videos. Still got Quentin Johnston as my wide receiver 1. But a lot of that is based on the upside that I think is there. And I look at him as a yards after the catch guy, and I see that wiggle and change of direction and what he can do, and immediately plant his foot, hit a spin move, big yards after the catch ability. And it's like, dude, you have way more juice than what you show in your 3-cone. And you have way more juice than what you show as a route runner. So I'm kind of hoping this plays out similar to what I saw with T. Higgins, where it's like, you see this guy with the ball in his hands, and there is so much more change of direction skills than what you see everywhere else. So can the right coach get that into his route running? I think that's possible here. And then 6'3", 200 and almost 10 pounds. Great downfield ability. Also the yards after the catch stuff that I've already hit on. Yes, it's a projection, but he's got the tools to become an absolute threat. And he's got the tools to be a wide receiver 1 in offense and be a big play waiting to happen both underneath with the yards after the catch ability, and it's just a true deep threat in the offense. So I love the upside Johnston brings, and especially in a wide receiver class where this isn't the strongest unit compared to years past. And then JSN is now my wide receiver 2. So I have been very, very slow to this. And my updated wide receiver rankings, he was wide receiver 5 behind Addison and Zay Flowers and even behind Josh Downs. And I still like those guys for what they are. But, my question I had to ask myself was, in the 2022 NFL draft, which granted, all those videos got lost because of my computer dying on me, and I didn't get the chance to put out a final big board. But my tier 1 was Jameson Williams, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, in that order. And the reason they were in tier 1 and then Chris Olave was tier 2, because I saw Olave as a 2B, or 1B, really, 2 wide receiver. He could be that really nice second option, or potentially even be so good that he's a 1B. I think last year he kind of proved that he could be a 1, but getting back on track here, I saw Williams, Wilson, and London as guys that could be the number 1 guy in that offense. Whether it's inside or out, they could be the guy who leads the way in the target share. And I look at Jackson Smith-Njigba and I say, well, how could I not make that argument? I absolutely think he has that potential. He'll just do it from the slot, which there are plenty of teams running 3 receiver sets. And maybe he won't go to a team that's running a lot of 2 tight end, but how many teams are really doing that on that insane of a rate? So JSN, I think, could be this Cooper Kupp kind of Amon-Ra St. Brown-esque player that leads the way in target share just from the slot. And he, 6'5", 7'3" cone, that tells a story. And he's 6'1", 200 pounds. He plays strong. And I think there's some yak upside there too. So JSN has been able to move up to my wide receiver too, and him and Johnson, it's floor versus ceiling argument all over again. Lucas Van Ness just ahead of Nolan Smith, and LVN gets the bump. Same thing with my edge rankings. This is the same thing then, just because of the inside-out flexibility. I think he could legitimately play some 3-4 DN and 3-4 outside linebacker. And then, pass situations, four-man front, you're a nickel. I think you could line him inside against guards because we already saw him do that against Iowa against Big Ten offensive linemen and more than hold his own. This guy is speed to power through and through, and also a really good run defender. So love all that for Lucas Van Ness and a redshirt sophomore, younger player. Feels like there's some upside to still mine into. Nolan Smith, a little bit of an older prospect, but also a team captain. So, kind of what do you value there? The youth or, that leadership mentality? Now, granted, LVN also went to Iowa where he understood older players are going to start even if they're not better than me. So, maybe that isn't that big of an edge for Smith as maybe I'm making it out to be. But you're probably asked Smith to gain 5-10 pounds worth of muscle, but you're getting an absolutely twitched up athlete, crazy 40 broad and vertical jump at the combine, showcasing speed and explosiveness, really good run defender right away. And then you're hoping that, hey, with a change in alignment, we're going to see the pass rush upside pretty much right away. So really like Nolan Smith. And honestly, truly as an edge, I'll take Nolan Smith, but I like the flexibility that LVN brings to the table. And then Deonte Banks at 19. I think a man press coverage specialist that runs 4.35, has the size to be a man coverage corner, and played a lot of zone at Maryland. Or not a lot, but various zone coverages. And, it's pretty evenly split between man and zone. Always at the catch point. Need to clean up the ball skills, but he was always there. He was always in a position to make a play, and that really stuck out to me with Deonte Banks. So big fan of his game and his upside. And then Kalijah Kancey. Not going to do much in the way of being a run defender, but man, that explosiveness, the ability to get into a guard before he's out of his stance, and with how polished he is using his hands, and even just the hand fighting, getting offensive linemen's hands off of him, I think makes up for where he only has those 3 percentile, arm length. So I think all of his best traits counter all of his weakest traits to where he'll be a productive pass rusher right away. I do worry about the ceiling, though, for Kancey, because at this point, we know what he is, and I don't know if he's going to be a whole lot better than what we already know him to be. Then we get to 21, Zay Flowers. Him and Gonzalez just move differently for the athletes in this class, where they're just gliding around the field, and it's crazy. I think Zay Flowers brings you the satellite, yak ability, also a deep route runner who, plays with an okay frame, like 5'9", but he's a little stocky, so he's got some strength. Really good at tracking the ball, and for the most part, for spectacular catches. I think he's had some focus drops on tape, but it's never stone cold drops. It's just he starts to turn his head and look upfield, and then the ball just pops out of his hands. So I think a route runner that can win at all 3 levels, but mostly you're talking about a guy that's going to win underneath and be a big play threat and get you some big plays over the top. And if he was a little bit bigger, like 6'1", I think you would see more production as an intermediate threat as well. But you're drafting this guy to be a satellite threat, but also a guy who pushes the ball down the field. And I think he does both those things really, really well. Then we get Jordan Addison, who ultimately does come in at wide receiver 4, but I still think he should be a first rounder. Like, I think you get to the back of the first round, and it's like, yeah, I think all these guys deserve to be in consideration. And honestly, I think it works out for a lot of contenders who are looking for that little bit of extra firepower. Like, I think about the Bills and even like kind of the Eagles at 30, where it's like, if we got somebody who's a legit wide receiver versus Quez Watkins just being straight line fast, how much better are we? Or like Kansas City even, it's Seattle at 20 and the Chargers at 21, the Ravens at 22. I can go on and on and on. The Vikings at 23. You get to those teams in that point of the draft, and it's like, yeah, that one more pass catcher could put you guys over the top and make you that much better of a squad and have you realize the max potential of your roster. So Addison, sure route runner. You just know this guy's getting open. And we saw the number of drops go down. The drop percentage is about the same. He just had less targets at USC. But nevertheless, a guy that's going to be an intermediate to deep threat in an offense. Really polished route runner again. And I think plays faster than that 4.49 speed that he ran at the combine. So I wish I had the NGS data to kind of back that up. But as long as you have the right role in mind for Jordan Addison, he's kind of Stephon Diggs light to me. Again, I think back half of the first round, he should be on a lot of teams' radars. Anton Harrison, noted my guy throughout this entire cycle. I just love how polished he is as a pass protector. Also a good athlete. He may not be the strongest guy, but I think you can change that at the NFL level. And I already think that he got a lot stronger this year versus where he was in 2022. too. So he's already making steps in the right direction. 3-year starter, plenty of pass blocking sets under his belt, and I feel like you can plug and play start this guy at left tackle. Michael Mayer, really good at blocking in a phone booth, might be the best contested pass catcher in this class, wide receiver, tight end, or otherwise, and has that typical tight end, boxy build, kind of power within his build as well. And I think 4.7, I know it's not gaudy, but I mean, like Darnell Washington ran 4.64. Is there really that big of a difference between 4.64 and 4.71? Yes, but not really. And it's the same, 40 time that TJ Hawkinson played or ran. And his athleticism more than plays at the NFL level. So I feel like Michael Mayer and his unathletic traits are getting a little overblown. He's just more of an average athlete versus a great athlete like some of the other guys in this class. Broderick Jones, I hope he goes to a zone blocking team because I love his ability to move, and I think he's a really good run blocker on the move. Kind of like Tyree Wilson, where it's like he is still a work in progress, and you need to clean up his hands. But once you do that, he'll become that much better of a player. And he's got the frame, he's got the athleticism, and maybe even profiles better as a right tackle versus left tackle. But I even think that flexibility is in the cards for Broderick Jones. O'Cyrus Torrence feels like a name that's been kind of forgotten about, and it kind of makes me think about Kenyon Green from last year, where everyone leading up to like April pretty much was like, yeah, Kenyon Green, that's a first rounder. And then you get to the month of the draft and nobody's talking about these interior offensive linemen. And maybe it's because we find other guys this late in the process and we're like, oh yeah, Chandler Zavala, man, what a great, pro day he had. Okay, there's a guy that's become a second rounder, and we kind of forget about what we already know O'Cyrus Torrence to be, but he's still such a good football player. He made the jump in competition from Louisiana Lafayette to Florida, really good run blocker, and also held up with that jump in pass pro. Didn't allow a sack, no penalties, which those don't always tell the story, but I think in the case of Torrence, it actually does, and held his own against Jalen Carter, and that's the biggest matchup that he had last year. So big fan of Torrence. And then Brian Brzee, followed by Myles Murphy, my two Clemson guys. I'll take Brzee just ever so slightly. I feel like his potential is untapped because he played so many different positions across the defensive line and then missed so much time because of injuries, and then obviously the personal tragedy last year with his sister passing. But because of that, he just wasn't on the field enough to really have that potential realized. And I think if he stayed at one position, too, we might have had a chance to see what it looks like. But for Brzee and Murphy alike, Clemson, those D linemen see double teams all the time because they run three-man fronts. So what happens when Brzee or Murphy start seeing more one-on-ones? I think the production automatically going to start to take a step in the right direction. And I said the same thing about Aleem McNeil coming from NC State, where the Wolfpack ran 3-3-5 pretty much, down in and down out. And look at Aleem McNeil. Had a couple of games last year with double-digit hurries. So I think once you just start getting more favorable matchups, naturally the production is going to follow. And I like Brzee's potential as long as he stays healthy and can stay in one position. I think a team is going to be able to mine that out of him. And then Myles Murphy, high-level run defender and a guy who can win with power right now. You just need to teach him a moveset. But once you get him there, he could become an absolute dominant presence there on the edge. But I also think he comes with a high floor because, again, he has a way to win right now. It's just going to be with power, not with anything else like a full move set, a swim move, or anything like that. And then you're also getting a really good run defender who saw a ton of double teams at Clemson. So I like both those guys a lot. And once we get to the 20s in mock drafts, I'm like, okay, where are my Clemson guys going? Then we get to 29, Tank Dell. I'm a huge Tank Dell guy. Now, granted, he's like wide receiver 5 here, so not a great wide receiver class. There are still some special talents in there. And I think Tank Dell, what separates him versus like a Josh Downs or some of the other guys, I think he can play inside or out. And I value those guys who can play outside as well as manning the slot. And that's what Flowers can do. That's what Addison can do. And same can be said about Tank Dell. Also, north of 100 catches at Houston, almost 1,400 yards, ton of touchdowns. He's been a volume guy. Now at Houston, in a lower level of competition in that conference, but nonetheless, he was asked to carry a workload, and he more than was up for the task. So I think you get that over-the-top speed, also great satellite yak weapon, but he's also a good intermediate route runner. Yes, he's 5'10" and sub 200 pounds or whatever, so he's a little light, or like 5'9", 180 is probably closer to where he's really at, but I think he can get open there. And as long as he doesn't have a defender on his backside, if he's open on a 10-yard dig, hit him, and then let him do whatever he can after the catch, where he is a really good player, and it's one of his strengths of his profile. So still a big fan of Tank Dell and what he could do for an offense. Now, maybe he's not wide receiver 1, but I think he could be like a solid 2 to a really good wide receiver 3. And then Darnell Washington rounds out the 20s and takes us into the 30s. Just an awesome blocker. And then I think with his athletic ability, 4.64 40, solid change of direction skills, also throw on his highlights and you'll see a hurdle basically every 5 to 10 clips, if that. Really, it's probably just like every 5 clips because DBs have to go low on him, but he's such a good athlete that it doesn't faze him. He'll just jump right over you. And obviously, you need to mine the potential that is Washington as a pass catcher, but his blocking ability makes him an easy starter right away. And even teams that have tight ends that they like there are plenty of good pass catching tight ends that a lot of teams would prefer they don't play on rundowns. And you could just insert Darnell Washington into those sets and get some immediate production. But I also like the upside of him as a receiver, and I'm one of those people who says there's more there than I think a lot of people are giving him credit for. All right, now further into the 30s, Dalton Kincaid. So, this comes down to your flavor here. Do I want the guy who I know is going to make a difference and be a sixth offensive lineman, essentially? Or do I want to take a chance on the guy with the highest upside as a receiver of this tight end class? And that's Dalton Kincaid. Great after the catch, awesome athlete, can work the middle of the field, big part of the offense, so a ton of production at Utah, soft hands. There's not a whole lot that he can't do. It's just I think he needs to grow as a blocker. And I don't know if necessarily 6'3", 240 is going to get him there. And he wasn't really asked to do it a whole lot at Utah, so he feels pretty raw there. But if he has the effort, then don't rule it out. I think he does have the effort to do it. Again, this comes down to flavor. And if I'm like the Bengals, maybe you prefer the blocking upside that comes with Washington versus if you're the Chargers, maybe you want the receiving upside of the Kincaid. Just throwing out some arbitrary names and some landing spots that I think we've seen a whole lot in mocks and I think do make sense given the skill sets of those tight ends. Then Josh Downs at 32. So I still think late first round, early second, I like Josh Downs in that range. Great yak ability, sneaky contested catch guy, 4'4", 840. Given that he's 5'9", he doesn't have insane stride length. I think it's a fine number. 38-inch vertical also shows on tape. Just an explosive athlete. Was a little banged up towards the end of last year for UNC, but if he's healthy, he's a difference maker. And I think a guy gets open underneath, but also just use him on crossing routes. Take advantage of his athleticism and let him run away from DBs. I think he'll create some big chunk plays for your offense if you do that. Then we get Will McDonald. Easily could flip these two guys because I really do like Will McDonald. And the more I watch, the more I like him. Already set a school record at Iowa State for sacks while playing out of position. 90th percentile arm length with that speed at the line of scrimmage and the bend to go with it. I'm not saying he's complete, but it's about as complete as you're going to get for a late first round type of guy. And honestly, I could even see him maybe surprising people depending on how the board plays, going somewhere like late teens into the 20s, early 20s. I don't rule that out whatsoever. And I like Will McDonald a ton. And I almost wonder by moving him to the edge, is he at least a competent run defender? Because he's someone who can set the edge. Because I feel like playing him out of position, everyone's like, oh yeah, Will McDonald's not a good run defender. But when he's playing on the inside, when he should be playing on the outside, if he's just a guy who can set the edge and hold that, that's really all you need out of him, given what you're going to get out of him as a pass rusher. And then that may change the perception we have about McDonald as a run defender. The alphabet, Adetomiwa Adibare, had to shorten up the first name just so it would fit here, but that is Adetomiwa Adibare. I kind of like him 3-tech or out wide. 3-4 D end, 4-3 D tackle or D end. That's kind of the positions I'm looking at. Now, I don't think 3-4 outside linebackers in the cards, but again, 3-4 D end, 4-3 D tackle or D end are all in play here. Really good combination of speed and power. Good against the run, good against as a pass rusher as well. And once we saw the combine, he was kind of this off the charts athlete. He really put himself on the radar. Also had a good Senior Bowl. So yeah, just a really good senior, kind of draft circuit, so to speak, for Adibare. And then John Michael Schmitz, really good on those reach blocks, and multi-year starter, 5 years worth of experience at college. I think he's just ready to be a plug-and-play starter at the NFL level. Easy to go late round one, or becomes a really good value somewhere there in the second round for a team that needs center, like the Giants, like the Seahawks, like maybe the Jets if the Ben Jones deal falls through. And again, I think his movement skills are really solid. He plays with power. He's just kind of the complete package at that center spot. And I even think he could play guard at the next level. And then Darnell Wright here at 36. My main concern here with Darnell Wright as he shot up boards is I think that Josh Heupel offense does a lot to keep him clean, right? Kind of like when Cliff Kingsbury got to Arizona and all of a sudden that offensive line got so much better. I think part of it's the system. Part of it's also the quarterback. And, Kyler Murray did a lot to keep those, offensive tackles in good spot because they were seeing a whole lot of rush contains. And Hendon Hooker's a sneaky athlete, but he didn't always utilize that. So maybe not as big of a component like it was in Arizona with Cliff Kingsbury and that O-line. But otherwise, Darnell Wright, I think underrated movement skills, might have the best anchor of anyone in this class, 6'6", 310, 315. He checks a whole lot of boxes. 4-year starter, 2 years at left tackle, 2 years at right tackle. There's a lot to like about Darnell Wright. Again, I just think he might have been kept clean by that system that Josh Heupel runs at Tennessee. Then Cam Smith here at 37, and I think him and Darius Rush are both really good football players. And Smith is just kind of solid across the board, but then with plus level ball skills. The ball's in the air, he's going to find it, track it, make a play on it. I think it comes with scheme versatility, man, zone, press, off, you name it, he can do it. Got a little handsy, a little too many penalties. Something I really liked about him coming into the season was he had very little penalty issues in years prior. This past season had 10 penalties against him, and that was more than double than the previous 2 seasons combined. So his 2023 season had more penalties than 22 and 21 combined, which not great to see that type of jump, especially in his last year in college football. But otherwise, I think that'll get shored up at the next level. And he ran 4.43 at the combine in the 40, which took away one of the main concerns that people had about him. So, yeah, I still think he's a solid football player and a really good value early round 2, and should get consideration late 1. Then Trenton Simpson at 38. 230 pounds is kind of the new 240. And then you throw in 4.43 speed in the 40, and it's like, yep, that'll play. Even played some nickel for Clemson. So he is a coverage specialist, but he takes on blocks well, and he is a good run defender and a sure tackler. So I think a movable chess piece in the middle of your defense, and I don't want to say he's like Isaiah Simmons, but more safe. But I feel like the NFL is now better equipped for a guy like Simpson, and a guy like Isaiah Simmons for that matter, than they were when Simpson was drafted. I feel like the NFL now has, they could even look at the college level, like the starbacker role at Alabama and Georgia and Clemson. They can even look to that as kind of a guy, which I don't think the Cardinals have done with Simmons yet. Maybe that'll change this year. But I think the NFL is kind of now in a position to take full advantage of a skill set like Simpson's. Then we get Jack Campbell at 39. So this comes down to, do you want 4.3 speed and kind of the new age build of a linebacker in Simpson? Or are you willing to sacrifice a little bit of that 40 speed and then take a guy who's 6'4", 240, 245, like kind of that prototypical big-time linebacker frame. And ultimately, I think Jack Campbell's going to be the first linebacker off the board. I could be wrong. We'll see once we get to Thursday, or Friday even for that matter, because it's really not a great linebacker class. Those guys may fall. But I think Jack Campbell, man, great tackler, awesome playing downfield, 95th percentile 3-cone, feels like I see it on tape all the time. And I think, with the 4.6 40, it's like, yeah, this guy's not a total liability in coverage. He can hold his own, and he has a ton of zone experience. So, if you go to a team like the Chargers, they would have to move back from 21, I think, or move up from their pick in the 50s. But something like that, a team that runs a whole lot of zone where he'll be comfortable and kind of, quote unquote, at home, I think is a really good spot for him to go. And that's why, I think like the Bills at 27, they make all the sense in the world. Again, maybe I'd prefer the move back and try to get him early round 2, but nevertheless, if you have to take him at 27, I think he makes a lot of sense to Tremaine Edmonds' replacement. And then Antonio Johnson at 40. So like I said, Texas A&M, not going to get their maroon in here just because you can't see it against the background. But another player that I like a ton, and it's just kind of like poor man's Brian Branch in a lot of ways, but at 6'2", 200 pounds, so he just does it at a different body type. Wish there was more playmaking ability, but otherwise, he's got everything else. Sure, tackler, great crashing downhill, good in coverage, so he can play truly in the nickel or play some box safety. Could be a really good tight end remover at the next level as well. Then at 41, Steve Avila, to be the best pass protector in this year's class. Like him a ton. Also a good gap scheme fit. Good power guard with some center flexibility. Jahmyr Gibbs at 42, just in case you guys are wondering why I'm moving so quick. I realized how long we've already been going. I need to pick up the pace here. Jahmyr Gibbs, 4.36 40. Once I saw he was only 4/100th of a second away from Devon Achane, I was like, yep, this guy absolutely solidified as my number 2 running back. Plus, as good as Bijan Robinson is a receiver, I don't think Gibbs is far off, if he's off at all. I think he can do a whole lot of the same stuff that Gibbs does, Bijan does as a receiving back. The difference being Bijan can win with power. I don't really think Gibbs has that in his profile. Julius Brent, another noted my guy. Love the potential here of a guy who runs sub-Devils 3-cone, 34-inch arms. That's 100th percentile. And a guy who's played in 2 different defenses, so he's made a transition from one school to the next, learned a new playbook. And I think at the NFL level, he'll be fine in man coverage, but get this guy in a zone-heavy defense and let him make plays and break up passes. Keanu Benton at 44. We haven't gotten to Mazi Smith yet. I think a lot of ways what people want Mazi Smith to be is what Keanu Benton already is. Really solid as a pass rusher, quick, good hand placement as well, has a full move set while also being a really good run defender, and he plays bigger than 311. I was surprised to see that at the combine because I was like, this guy feels like he He plays at 320, 325, 330 or something like that. Parker Washington at 45. Yeah, this might be a little early for some people in Parker Washington, but I just look at a guy who can do anything. Really good yak weapon, sneaky contested catch ability, can win downfield, can be a guy who you rely on and kind of is your Jarvis Landry of sorts, who's just running zigs and hitches and works the underneath stuff, finds the soft spot in zones. Also, doesn't have terrible size, could work the intermediate parts of the field. The one negative about Washington is he's slot only, but this is a wide receiver class with a ton of those guys. So to me, he's kind of one of my favorite of the bunch. And then you get Jalen Hyatt at 46, who I think could play on the outside or on the inside. Again, the alignment for Tennessee wide receivers is really, really weird, where slot wide receivers are basically where NFL outside wide receivers are at, and then outside wide receivers are literally lining up on the sideline. But speed for days, over-the-top ability. Now, granted, can he add more to the route tree? That's TBD, but if he does, then he'll be more than just that one-trick pony, vertical, go-ball guy. But even if he's only that guy, we've seen the value of Deshaun Jackson, Will Fuller, and guys like that bring to the table because they push safeties further down the field and give more possession receivers room to work with in the intermediate and middle of the field. Then we get to Dawand Jones. I like Dawand Jones, really strong guy, big hands, massive wingspan as well. I just think he'll struggle with smaller, speedy bend guys that can get underneath him. But if you can go to a team like Baltimore or Chicago where teams can't really have that same pass rush, focus, they have to rush contain a lot, he's going to be fine. And if anything, he's going to look like, Orlando Brown Jr. when he first got to Baltimore, and he's just going to be a stud starter pretty much right away. But outside of those situations, I could see him having some struggles. Derek Hall, then B.J. Ojulari. So this one was tough. Hall's a little stiff. Ojulari's a little light. Wish he had more strength. But I like the arm length, 82nd percentile for Hall, and that was ultimately the bump here, because I think he has the speed, he has the bend, plus the arm length. So I'm looking at multiple ways in which he can win. And that inside counter, I think Hall's a whole lot better. And also, let's play a little lower to the ground. I want to see you get underneath tackles, and I think he becomes that much better if he just kind of unstiffens or loosens up. That's the better way of putting it. And then B.J. Ojulari, again, needs to add some weight and some strength, but this guy's ready. Full move set. It started at LSU as the guy who would attack outside shoulders of tackles, and that was enough. But then now he's added that inside counter, and to me, he's a full pass rusher in regards to his move set. He knows how to have that pass rush plan against the tackle. He just needs to get bigger and stronger. And then Kelee Ringo at 50. A guy that's definitely fallen from grace, but I still like a lot of the things that are there. And I almost wonder if you could put this guy in like a cover 2 heavy defense or quarters heavy defense, if he'll be all right. Because then, cover 2, he's just sitting in the flat. He'll press the line and stay there. And then quarters, you got your lane, and it's a quarter of the field. You're not asking him to do a whole lot of lateral movement. So those might be spots and schemes where you're not as worried about the limitations that come with Kelee Ringo, and instead you're focused on 6'2", 4.3, 6 speed, and long arms to go with. All right, into the 50s even more. Tyreek Stevenson comes in at 51. I think a high floor guy, but I kind of worry about the ceiling. But we've seen him play in the nickel at Georgia, then on the outside at Miami, and looked great at the Senior Bowl as a true man press corner. So I think man press, cover 2, 4, 6 off of it, this guy can be a day one starter. Luke Whippler, and then not too far away is Joe Tippmann, but we'll talk about Whippler here. One of the highest graded centers in PFF system over the last couple of years as a starter at Ohio State. Good movement skills, actually weighs a little bit more than John Michael Schmitz, or at least he did at the combine. JMS might be bulking back up now. But the movement skills are there. He's also not weak. Like you talk about these guys who are good on the move, like where's their strength at? That's not an issue for Whippler. And maybe where you could flip him and Tippmann, I think Whippler's center only. Tippmann might have the flexibility to play guard, but we'll come back to that in a moment. DJ Turner at 53. And honestly, I thought about moving him up even more. He's kind of got that Devin Witherspoon. Like, this dude is so sudden as an athlete. His mirroring ability is, I don't want to say second to none because Witherspoon exists, but it's like third to none to anybody in this class. Maybe Gonzalez is in that mix too. But his ability to read and react against a receiver and anticipate routes is fantastic. And then when you run, a 6.283 3 cone and a 4.2 640, that athleticism plays, and it might be enough to overcome the fact that he's 5'10 and sub 180, and that's a little bit of a concern. Joe Tippmann, as noted, 6'6", great on the move. Wish we could have seen what he could have done at the Combine, Pro Days, all those true athletic numbers and stuff like that. But nevertheless, when you watch the tape, this guy looks really, really good, getting up to the next level. And because he is big and he's got some more weight than Whippler and John Michael Schmitz, maybe he could play some guard, and that guard center flexibility is something that teams covet. Felix Enrique Ozama, another name that had to get cut off because it's so long, but nevertheless, speedy, bendy guy at 6'3", 255. I think it's a really nice blend of enough mass to play the position on early downs, while also like this guy's first step and then beat and bend and ability to get underneath tackles is really, really special. It can make him an immediate contributor to a pass rush unit. Mazi Smith finally here at 56. Good run defender, and he got better year over year and week over week this past season, but year over year at Michigan we saw the strides, and that's what the upside is there for, right? Like, this guy's going to be a good run defender, and his ability to eat space, and then also be able to read and react, shoot gaps against interior offensive linemen. All that's there, and you see that in the run defense side. But then it's like, man, when he wants it, he's a solid pass rusher and still growing in that area. His just want to and his consistency feel like they kind of come and go week in and week out. So if you can kind of get that consistent, Mazi Smith, then yeah, I buy into what people see as him as a pass rusher. I just don't know if you're really going to see it week in and week out at the NFL level. Diane Henley then at 57, twitched up athlete that is an awesome coverage player. Ability to shoot gaps, but otherwise could be a liability in the run game. But whether it's zone, cover the middle of the field, or man going one-on-one against linebackers and tight ends, I think Diane Henley can hold up in coverage more than enough. Sidney Brown, best safety or best athlete of the safety class. And just wants to lay the boom. Now, he's not a great tackler, and that's a little bit concerning considering this is a guy that wants to play downhill, but like Chris Sims calls him, he's a psycho, man. He's just looking to make a play, and he's just, sometimes gets a little ahead of himself because of that, but he's just looking to make a big play, and when he hits, man, it hurts. It hurts you watching through the screen, but also has that kind of ability to kind of create that pass break, create some forced fumbles, things like that. So he's got that downhill ability, and also a better coverage player than you might suggest, but as a 5'10", a little bit under 190 pound, hard hitting safety that's good downhill. A little bit better in coverage, and I think some people want to give him credit for it. And then Keon White here at 59. Made some strides as a pass rusher since, tight end to edge and then ODU to Georgia Tech, but still needs to grow in that realm. But I do think because of how good of an athlete and how fluid he moves on the field, you're getting a good run defender. And the fact that he's 6'5", 280, he kind of has that frame, and he's got good strength as well. Hold his line and sit at the line of scrimmage and make some plays there against running backs. So I like the player, but he's a bit of a risk, and he's 24 years old. So, where do you take this project player that's already in his mid-20s? That's kind of a tough thing to gauge. And then Jamie Robinson here at 60. The athletic testing really kind of let me down with Robinson. But other than that, man, I really like the player, and I love what I see on tape. Can play free, strong, nickel. I think wherever you put him on the field, he can become a solid starter pretty much right away. Isaiah Foskey then at 61. Doesn't have anything that's wow-inducing when it comes to his athletic ability and, solid frame, 6'4", 260. But again, nothing that's you're going to write home about. But has a full move set and knows how to put together a pass rush plan against a tackle. So again, that makes him kind of NFL ready in my mind, but at the same time, because he doesn't have that trump card, maybe he isn't. So I don't know, I'm kind of back and forth on Foskey, but the fact that he is such a high IQ player, I do like him a fair amount. And late second, early third, I think it's a good spot for him to go. Michael Wilson then at 62. Only played 26 games over 5 years, but what we've gotten to see, he's a really good player. And especially the Senior Bowl. He looks 6'2", 215. He plays faster than 4.58. Has great ability to box out a DP, can get open over the middle of the field. I love his release sets. I think he can just be that prototypical X wide receiver. It just comes down to, can Michael Wilson stay healthy? Chandler Zavala, big time addition to this big board. He almost certainly was not on my way too early big board, but 501 40 this pro day, and he's 320 plus pounds, a mauler in the run game, but also holds up really well in pass pro. Kind of feels like the full package. It's just a little weird that we waited so long to be able to notice Chandler Zavala, and he's guard only. I don't think there's any tackle upside there, so good second round player for sure. Cody Mock at 64. Guard, played tackle, but former tight end. So he's kind of all over the board, and ultimately I think the best position for Cody Mock is center, because he's a good enough athlete to hold his own, be able to snap and read and react, and be able to hold up against pass pro, or in pass pro as a guy's coming right at him after snapping the ball. But also after seeing the Ravens and using Tyler Linderbaum as a pulling center, that's what I want to see Tennessee or someone like that use Cody Mock on, because once he's on the move and gets his sights set on you, get out of the way. You don't want anything to do with Cody Mock in that spot. Marvin Mims here at 65. Again, he's one of these guys where I feel like I'm higher on him than most. Inside-out flexibility, but even if he's slot only, that's really good running over the middle of the field, has 4.38 speed, so you have that over-the-top threat, and has been a big part of the Oklahoma offense and very productive. And again, kind of like Tank Dell, where you're not asking him to box out corners, but can get open over the intermediate parts of the field and has that route running ability. So I think it could be a guy that wins at all three levels. Good satellite player, good deep threat. I don't get what's not to like as a even late second round type of guy. Darius Rush here at 66. Again, I'm moving Rush up my boards because the more I see him, especially at the Senior Bowl after day one, like I really like Darius Rush. Long arms, mid 4.3 speed, great press upside, while also I think has the movement skills to hold up in zone. So another one of these talented corners that, because there's so many, maybe we're not talking about them all the same, but I think Darius Rush is a damn good one. Tanner McKee, then Hendon Hooker. So McKee's my QB5, Hooker's my QB6. The reason McKee gets the bump is because he's coming from this awful situation in Stanford. Again, Michael Wilson only played 26 games over 5 years. And then that was really the only other NFL caliber talent around him. The O-line was bad. The coaching situation was getting rough. And then no wide receiver talent outside of Wilson. But has the size, the arm strength, very accurate passer, sneaky mobility. I think at the NFL level, he'll be a better pro once he just gets a better environment around him. It's kind of the same stuff I talk about and apply to Will Levis at QB2. And then Hooker, kind of the other side of the same coin is like, yeah, great at throwing over the middle of the field. Another very good sneaky athlete. Hooker's a better athlete than McKee, no doubt, especially on the move. Can throw over the middle of the field with the best of anybody in this class. And when it throws with timing and anticipation, he's very, very good. But I feel like a lot of that is the Josh Heupel offense. Like the receivers don't have wide route trees. Everybody knows what they need to do on a play. They know where to be, and Hooker kind of benefits from it. He knows when the ball's supposed to be out. It's Jimmy G in that San Francisco offense, and I feel like that inflates Hooker a ton. And it's really not even my concerns about his injury history or his age. It's just like you're in that Josh Heupel offense. You're in as good a spot as it could be. With potential first rounder Cedric Tillman, potential first rounder Jalen Hyatt, and first rounder Darnell Wright at tackle. There's a lot working in his favor there, so I worry about what that means at the next level. And then continue our string of orange here. This is actually a different orange there for Matt Bergeron. That's Syracuse orange, looking slightly different from Hooker and Tillman. But anyways, more important stuff here. Bergeron, I called him O-line because I'm kind of coming around the idea of him playing IOL. I just worry about D tackles getting into his chest. But other than that, I really do like Bergeron as a prospect. I think you see his strength a ton when moving forward. But again, when people get into his chest, he kind of folds like a house of cards, and that power just evaporates out of thin air. But also plus level run blocker because of that strength, and again, really good moving forward. And I don't think he's bad in pass pro either. So whether he's playing guard or maybe moving to or staying at tackle, I think he could be a solid value there, late 2, early 3. And then Cedric Tillman here at 70. And I wish I could have had him even higher because him and Michael Wilson are about the only guys that are 6'3" or 6'2" in Wilson's case and actually play like it. Mingo's another good example, but he's 6'1.5". But these are one of the few big body guys that truly plays like it. And Tillman, who I don't think was bad in 22, was better in 21, and you see more athletic ability to go on top of the fact he's 6'3", 210 plus pounds, can box out corners. Yeah, I like a lot of what Tillman brings to the table, especially after checking out his 21 tape. Then Emmanuel Forbes at 71. I just really worry about the 166 pounds. That's why I view him more as an early third round guy for me. But has the traits, the arm length and height to say, hey, this guy should be a man coverage specialist, while playing a ton of zone at Mississippi State and has a bunch of ball production. And while the picks might be a little fluky sometimes, PBU 17, you can't make that up. That's being in the right spot and getting your hands on the football and making a play on it. Tuli Tuipulotu, he's a little bit lower on my board than most because I wish I knew what the athletic testing was like. But otherwise, this guy's polished, can be an NFL-ready player really on all 3 downs, can be good against the run, and as a capable pass rusher. Wish I saw more of his hurries convert to sacks, but sometimes that's just variance playing games on guys. Again, I just wish I knew what his athletic testing was at, because if he has like above average testing numbers, he's way higher than this. But also he might be hiding something that we just don't know about, and he's not really an NFL caliber athlete. So a little bit of a TBD there. Zach Charbonnet at 73. I still like Charbonnet a ton. 4.53 speed is faster than most people would think that Charbonnet has. He's got that ability to plant one foot in the ground and hit the hole hard. So he may not do it with jump cuts, but that one cut ability is there. And then 4.53, 220 plus pounds. This Big Ten running back coming in your direction, you don't want any of it. So I think a guy that can consistently pick up 5+ yards a time, may not pick up 80-yard gains, but can pick up some chunk plays and keep your offense moving in the right direction. Luke Musgrave at 74, better, not as good of an athlete than people were expecting, at the combine, but I think ever since then, everyone's been just kind of like downplaying his athleticism. So I think a better athlete than where people are giving him credit for right now. And yeah, he missed time, but what we got to see this year at Oregon State and the Senior Bowl, he's a pretty polished tight end in my books. Good route runner, soft hands. So I like him a ton as a 3rd-round value. Eli Ricks, another one of those guys that when we got to see him, looks really, really good. Just didn't get to see him a whole lot Only played like 4 games this year with Alabama. Also, the 60-3 cone kind of had me concerned, so he's fallen down the ranks a little bit here. But man, as a press corner, leaning into his height and arm length, I think there's something to tap into. And Garrett Williams, another guy that, man, I wish we could have seen what the back half of this year looks like. So wish we could have seen him on the field more. But we were all anticipating a breakout for a reason. And I think he's got a lot of man coverage traits while playing in a defense that played a whole lot of zone. That's a really interesting combination for me. And he's got better footwork than Ifeatu Melifonwu, who I liked as a third rounder a couple of years ago. Drew Sanders at 77. Yeah, admittedly, I'm a little bit lower on Sanders. Like him more as a third rounder. But you see the athleticism and how it could play over the middle of the field. And he can get to a ball carrier quick, but I think he needs to get better at filling run lanes and even better as a tackler for that matter. But he does bring a whole lot of pass rush upside right away. He's a good blitzer slash, maybe even rotated in as an edge rusher. Maybe he could follow that Baron Browning-esque, kind of career path and just play true edge, which is what Alabama used him at while he was a part of the Crimson Tide. Gervon Dexter, good run defender, and he's up to like 318 pounds, so 6'6", 318 with his explosiveness is a rare commodity. So I think I like the idea of him being a good run defender, so you can play him on early downs and get him on the field and just get him more and more experience. It's just going to take somebody finding that pass rush upside, because you see flash for plays, not even like drives or games. It's like plays. You need to be able to mine more of that. You got to get more of that and find that consistency where he can live up to that game-wrecking potential that's in his body. But that size, that athleticism, that explosiveness, he should go somewhere in the top 100. Then Karl Brooks just behind it, and it's just kind of a different story. Where athletically speaking, there is not a lot about Karl Brooks that says, wow, gotta draft this guy early. It's just more so he's a 300-plus pound edge at Bowling Green who dominated as a pass rusher. And it's like, okay, well, what does he look like moving on the inside? And at Senior Bowl, I would say he looked solid. I think he looked good both as a run defender, held his own, wasn't a weakness, and then looked like he could win on the inside as a pass rusher. So I like him as a sneaky kind of upside play if you're looking for, 4-3-D tackle. I kind of like him going to Chicago, being like a cheap, poor man's, 3-tech disruptor that Eberflus is looking for, but also don't hate him going to like 3-4 teams playing some DN there. So I think there's some flexibility with how you use Karl Brooks. And I've been saying he's going to go 75 in this big board. I kind of shuffled things around last second. 79 is still not bad for a guy coming from Bowling Green. And then Byron Young here at edge. And, I like Brooks more than Byron Young. And honestly, he was more productive on the edge than Byron Young. Different conferences, different levels of play for sure. But Young is a really good athlete and, 5-year college player. So I think teams are going to look at him and be like, this guy should be NFL ready. And he's got insane athleticism. Hopefully they'll be able to get more production out of him than what he had at Tennessee. Sam Laporta, really good athlete. I think a good blocker could get even better at the NFL level with some right coaching. And a good yards after the catch weapon. He's trying to make everybody miss. He thinks he's like a elusive running back. And I wish he played with a little bit more power and would just lower his shoulder, go through smaller DBs. But other than that, small nitpick, this guy's got a really well-rounded skill set at the tight end position. And I think, again, there's some spots where yards after the catch and blocking-wise, he'll get better at the NFL level. Jordan Battle at 82. Yeah, another guy whose athletic testing left a lot to be desired. But, I just trust the tape. He's so instinctual. He's always in the right place at the right time. Good tackler and solid as a zone coverage player. I don't know if you want him over the top, but playing some box safety, some hook zones, I think he'll hold up. Tank Bigsby at 83. Speed to power type of running back, and I meant to make that a comment out of Dash. My fault. A little small hiccup there with the graphics. But, he cleaned up his footwork of the last year at Auburn. I think he was kind of tripping over himself a ton in 21 and 22, and I think that's gotten better this past season. And I will say, I wish we could go back and see true freshman Tank Bigsby again, because that dude was insane. But I also think the Bryant Harsley era kind of dampened some of the upside that a lot of these Auburn players could have had, and kind of just put that Auburn program back a step. Then Clark Phillips, corner from Utah. To me, he's a nickel corner only, but this is how good I think he could be as a nickel corner, where I still have him in the top 100. Really good value as a third-round pick, where you're playing nickel 65, 70, 75% of the time. So this guy is going to be pretty much a starter for you. And one of the best corners in college football, and one of the best defenses in the nation. Sticky in coverage, also willing tackler, can be kind of a scrappy player there. So I like him a lot as a slot corner. Dwayne McBride, one of the most productive running backs in college football. He just comes from a small school at UAB, but can win with power, picks up chunk plays left and right, 10 and 20 yards at a time. Not going to do a whole much in the way of being a pass catcher, but another explosive enough back and can do the dirty work, plays with power, and has a little bit more twitchiness than like some of the other straight pure power backs have in years past. But this is also just a really good running back class. Next player is an offensive tackle. It's Blake Freeland from BYU. A little bit more battle tested than someone like a Brady Christensen. And then at 6'8" and a little over 300 pounds. has really good movement skills. So it's interesting. You look at 6'8" and his movement skills, that feels like it shouldn't match up, but it does. And then just over 300 pounds, plus he has a solid anchor. He's not like totally weak and like someone's going to get to his chest and he's going to fold. No. So like he's got multiple components that don't really feel like they add up with one another, but really do like Freeland as a 3rd round pick and a guy who could start day one. Jonathan Mingo then at 87. Wish we saw some more production just to validate what I think I see, but I think he could be a guy that's 6'1", 210, 215 pounds, mid 4.4 speed. Could be a guy who wins at all 3 levels. I think he boxes out his defenders well in the intermediate stuff, stacks his defenders well in the deep stuff, while also being a really good yak weapon. So again, a guy I think could contribute at all 3 levels. It's just a little bit of a projection to make on how it'll translate to the NFL level. Moro Ojomo, a guy who I think I'm higher on than most, 6'3", 290. So he's actually a little bit heavier than someone like a Draymond Jones who just fetched a bag from Seattle. So awesome run defender, and I don't think he needs to gain any weight. He could maybe get to that 300-pound mark, whether it's 4'3", 3'4", maybe that plays a factor. But as a 3'4" DN, I think he's fine at the weight he's got. But also a better pass rusher than everyone's talking about, like an 18% pass rush win rate at Texas. Maybe that's because he's a Big 12 defender going against not great offensive lines. Sure, maybe, but I see the athleticism. I see it in the first step, and I also think he's got good hands. So I think he's going to be a productive player and maybe a surprising guy that, especially I feel like I'm higher on him. Maybe he becomes a day 3 guy that becomes a starter pretty quickly and becomes more impactful and more productive than some people are seeing coming, but I'm a big fan of Moro Ojomo. Zach Harrison has everything but bend, but otherwise great speed, straight line speed that is, awesome frame and weight to go with it, can win with power. If you iron out his consistency and put him in the right defense where, especially like Carolina, that's where I love mocking him, where you have a speed bend guy on one side and then the power rusher on the other end. That's a really awesome defense for him to step into. Also, I think he'd be benefited from a defense like that where someone else is getting a lion's share of attention like Brian Burns, and Harrison, therefore, is going to get a lot of one-on-one. So, he can just consistently rely on his power and eventually get some production with that. Quan Martin here at 90. Yeah, it's tough because I'm saying him here as like a nickel corner strong safety hybrid, but also with him tapping into a little bit of playing some free safety last year at Illinois, I'm intrigued by what that upside could look like. And if you think he could play free safety, considering there's really not any in this class, true free safeties, I'd move him up probably close to 10 spots. But it is a projection that I make, and I have made that projection the last few mocks that I've done because he is so straight line fast while also having an explosive first step. But him in the nickel, being able to read and react, you see that same explosiveness. And also a guy who's gotten better year over year at Illinois as a tackler and as a run defender. And then we get Tucker Kraft. This should say 91, another graphics guy mistake. I'll have to fire him after this video. But Tucker Kraft, I'm intrigued by his upside. I do worry, though, that he looks like a stud against lower level competition. But he does have good athletic numbers, so maybe he's a draft and stash and development guy towards the end of the top 100. Andrew Voorhees would have been higher if not for the injury. But I also think post ACL injury, he'll be able to be plug-and-play starter at left guard, multi-year starter at USC, played 5 years of college football in total, and I think he's just polished both as a run blocker and as a pass blocker. Then Devon Achane, 4.32 speed, I had to put it somewhere in here. That home run threat is definitely there, but he's also got more receiving ability than I think a lot of people are talking about right now. And when you have 4.32 speed, just dump it to him in the flat, and if a team's playing like soft zone, he's got room to run and hit that top speed. He'll create some big plays for you. Ronnie Hickman, breakout player from Ohio State this last year. Also another one of these safeties that moved all over the field. Had a solid, combine, not great, but compared to some of the other safeties, better numbers than most, unfortunately. But I like him a ton as like a strong safety nickel corner hybrid and really good tackler and I think really good covering in the middle of the field. So again, that strong safety role is kind of calling my name for Ronnie Hickman. Jaden Reed, another one of these slot onlys, but 4.44 speed, and 5'11", 190 pounds, not a bad frame, can win at all 3 levels. Maybe not as much yak ability as like a Parker Washington, but I don't think it's like a weakness in his game. I don't think it's something you can't ask him to do. But you're going to use him as someone who gets open underneath or intermediate, and then maybe tapping him as a deep threat again. Low 4.4 speed is a tool to be utilized. So I like him a ton. He's just kind of a jack of all trades, but not a master at anything. So solid player, and I think worth being taken in the 3rd round. DeMarvion Overshown, another guy I had to shorten up his name, but if you've been around the channel, even though this is a weak linebacker class, I have been a noted Overshown believer basically from the start. And after seeing him cleaning up his tackles this year, it feels like he's making strides in the right direction. So I'm really excited for Overshown's upside. And 230 pounds, again, 230 is kind of the new 240, plus the safety converted to linebacker is field for coverage. I think there's a lot lot of upside with Overshown. Then Tyler Steen, I am looking at him as a guard, but a guard that could fill in and play tackle in a pinch is something that I'm really coveting. And, you know, I like safety versatility. I also like offensive line versatility. So Steen kind of brings that. Multi-year starter at Vanderbilt. Then Alabama, and he held up there, but I do think he does profile, at least from a measurement standpoint, better as a guard. Then Siaki Ika here at 98. A lot of lower body strength, and then sneaky finesse pass rush upside, so a really interesting combination for a defensive tackle, but I do wish he was that 360 that Baylor had him listed at versus the 330 that we got at the combine, and then some so-so athletic numbers, so-so putting it politely in his favor. And then Wanya Morris, former 5-star recruit, and then he's got the size and the athleticism. He is a project the rest of the way. So him and Jalen Duncan are kind of two guys I look at, and it's like, I mean, you have so many tools to work with. Somebody's just got to be able to take those tools and, you know, get you in the right spot, put you in a position where you're actually realizing and using those tools at your disposal. So definitely both are projection picks, but I like Wanya Morris a fair amount, and the right team takes him towards the end of the top 100. I think there's some potential for him to be a starter, maybe even right away. And it depends on the team. Like San Francisco, it's like, start him. What do you have to lose? He's not any worse than whoever else you have on roster. But let's say he went to Kansas City, you can draft and stash him, and maybe by year 2 or 3, he's ready to go as a starter. And then we get Kobe Turner here at 11. I remember looking back at my way too early IDL rankings, and my honorable mentions, I ended with Kalijah Kancey, who was number 20 on my big board here. And then Kobe Turner was the last name I mentioned. And he was this guy, U of R, transferred to Wake Forest, and both against the run and as a pass rusher has been nothing but productive. Not the biggest guy, you know, so I do worry about him as a run defender. But Kobe Turner has been another one of those noted my guys, and I should have put him in my my guys video, but he is a my guy for day 3 versus like a my guy for like round 1, round 2, something like that. So it's just different, and you know what's going to get more clicks. Not me talking about Kobe Turner. I'll tell you that one for free. But I do like Kobe Turner a ton. I am a little biased. I'm from Richmond, Virginia, so maybe that's part of why the former U of R Spider is calling my name. But even at Wake Forest, super productive, both against the run and as a pass rusher. Had like 10 hurries against Clemson. Not a very good offensive line, but you saw that potential in a big game, in a game that Wake Forest was kind of surprisingly very competitive in. So I'm still a big believer in Kobe Turner. Probably going to have to put him on a D-line where you have a good run defender next to him. But if you do that, tap into his upside as a pass rusher, I think there's a lot to be optimistic about for Kobe Turner. But, guys, that is going to do it for my updated 2023 NFL Draft Big Board. Hey, it's draft week, so I wanted to push out my top 100 prospects. Let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who do I have too high in your opinion? Who do I have too low? Again, this is a very subjective process and video, so don't beat me over the head. It's not that I'm right or that you're right. It's just we see these prospects a little differently. So let me know maybe some of the biggest differences between your board and mine, and hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Be sure to hit that like button. Seriously, it would help me and the channel out a ton if you did. And subscribe if you're new and want to see more football content in your life, and if you want to join us for day 1 and day 2 of the NFL Draft, where we will be live. So apologies again if I talked fast. I know this was already a long video, so I do apologize for that as well. But that's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teach, and I am signing off.